Welcome to the second in a series of videos in which I, a board game enthusiast, try to reduce my board game collection by half. I will explain my thinking as I decide what I'm going to keep and what's got to go, and it might help you think about what you like in a board game. But why am I doing this? Well, I want to make more space in my home. Before recording, I measured the dimensions in every board game and card game in my collection, added up the volume, turns out to be a total of 260 liters, which is a surprisingly uninteresting fact. I think is kind of meaningless, which is the issue. But after careful consideration, I have decided that I would like to make more space in my home. So let's look at today's games for consideration. And here I've taken some of the bigger boxes off the shelf. But these are, of course, are heavy strategy board games, which is my favorite kind of board game. And I want to talk to you about what in particular I look for in a heavy strategy board game. And I'm going to use Gaia Project to illustrate this. So, in Gaia Project, you are advancing along these research tracks, right? And it's important to stay ahead on the track. But what I'd like to point out is that in a game of Gaia Project, there is literally no way a player can go advance two spaces on a track on their turn. Which means that if on your turn you advance to the same level as I am on, then on my turn, if I'm able, I can advance ahead. And what I'm talking about here is that's the sort of tightness and structure that I like. Don't get me wrong, it's competitive and interactive because if you are acquiring knowledge at a faster rate than I am, then you will advance ahead of me on that track. You will outpace me, but it feels like a fair fight, in which case, I feel like I've been outplayed, and that is how I like to feel if I lose a game, and that's what I look for in a heavy strategy board game. Another example is if there is a planet that I have my eye on, but I know that you're interested in it too. Well, for example, it might be the case that you don't have the navigational range to reach it, at which point, I can relax and concentrate on other things. But as soon as you increase your navigational range, firstly, I notice that, and then on my turn, I have a chance to react and do something about it. But my point is that in Gaia Project, you couldn't increase your range and get the planet on one turn. I always would have an opportunity to do something or to respond or react. And it's those kind of certainties that give the game structure for me and allow me to base decisions on. And that's what I'm looking for in particular in a strategy board game. But of course, another thing is it's really important that I am able to see this stuff. That even though in Gaia Project, even though it's a huge game, an intricate map, and people have their player board in front of them, and yet if you increase your power a little bit, I can perceive that. I am aware of that. It feels like a spider in the center of a web can sense a tweak on the outermost thread. That's what it feels like playing a game of Gaia Project. You're just pulled really taut, but you're aware of every little thing that's going on across the board that concerns your strategy and your game. And that's the sort of feeling that I really love in playing board games. It's my favorite kind of thing. And another thing that I think is important in a heavy strategy board game is that at the start of the game, you're able to see something that's going to go through the game. There's going to be some end game goals. But Gaia Project does this so well because it's got these final scoring tiles and also these round scoring tiles, which plot a course through the game. But as well as that, at the top of the research tracks, these sort of prizes are all laid out there at the start of the game, so you have lots to aim for and go for, and lots of opportunity to make strategies. And what I'm saying is you're able to plan a route through the game and then try and execute it. And maybe the other players will get in the way of that. Most likely they will. But at least you're able to see everything at the start of the game and make a plan. And that's something I look for in a strategy board game. In contrast to that, in Keyflower, each round some tiles are flipped over which players will bid on in order to add them to their village, but in round 2 and round 3 you will not know which tiles are going to be in the game until the start of that round, so it's actually not possible to plan a course and plan your strategy based on that, because you don't know what's going to come out each game. You get the end game scoring tiles dealt to you at the start of the game, and then you can plot a course through the game, trying to score off those tiles. The problem with that though is that you're not guaranteed to score off the tiles that you have. In the final round, you have to put them in and bid for them in the hope that you get them. So there's a bit of uncertainty there, and you're building your game on this thing that's not 100% secure, which if a game is going to last 2 hours and then in the final round, the scoring is a bit sort of thrown up in the air, that's something that I'm not so keen on. However, in Keyflower, there's lots of strategy, and like in Gaia Project, you're aware of what's going on in other players' villages. And indeed, if I get a pub in my village or renovate the pub, then you can be sure that before it gets around to my turn again, some other player will have sent his workers down the pub in my village, which means I can't use it. There's lots of strategy in Keyflower, and it's the sort of game that I really like. With Keyflower in particular, the artwork I really enjoy. I think it's done by the designer's wife. It's quite unique, idiosyncratic, so that's a real sort of feature for Keyflower for me. And another heavy strategy board game, Barrage. This one I've only played twice, but I'm really getting the feeling that it's much like Gaia Project in that there's really good design in this game in order to encourage strategy. Like, for example, you can see all of the water that's going to be coming down the headstreams for all 5 rounds. It's on display at the start of the game. And the locations in which dams and power stations and conduits can be placed, that's all there on show at the start of the game. And where you're going to want to build depends on what other players, where they build. But of course, I can probably predict what you're going to do, but will I be able to stop you or do anything about it? Well, that's another question. And now is that time in the episode where I have to decide what I'm going to keep and what has got to go. And this is going to be tricky because, as you can tell, I really love these board games. And I'm going to tell you that there's no way Gaia Project is leaving. And with both Gaia Project and Barrage, I'm still getting to know these games. So for that reason, I'm going to hold on to them. But remember, I am trying to keep just half of these games. So for that reason, I'm going to let Keyflower go, which is very painful because, I actually want to play Keyflower, but it's just that I want to play these other games more. And it feels like that's going to be the case for a long time. And in fact, I haven't actually played Keyflower in a couple of years. So it's a game I'm going to let go, but I'm going to hope that I get to play somebody else's copy. And now it's time to check my progress towards my goal of keeping just half of my board game collection. So far, I've managed to keep just a quarter of the games, but now I'm going to add in Barrage and Gaia Project because I want to keep them. So that means I'm going to slide back to keeping 40% of my games, which means I'm still on target, so I'm happy about that. Curious correlation there between volume of games and playtime. It'll be interesting to see if that continues, though not a lot of data really so far to base that on. Now, next time you'll have to join me when I'm going to be puzzling over the puzzle games in my collection. I'll see you then.